So in our previous videos, we talked about setting up standard forms, and we talked about hidden fields, and we talked about calculating forms, calculating fields. But now we're going to talk about something a little bit more exciting, which gives us a lot of kind of flexibility, control over our forms, and how we can make the forms as easy as possible for users to fill out. So we want to create forms that are going to be relevant to our users, or only show them questions that are going to be relevant to them. So I'm going to create a new form here. And we're going to create it, yeah? So there's a lot of different things that we can do with conditional logic. So conditional logic is essentially based on how users fill out our form, we can have certain actions take place, whether that be showing them additional form fields, or doing additional notifications, or even combining them with our calculations to show them a specific result. So I'm going to just do a very simple explanation here about how conditional logic works, and then we'll go into some of the more advanced tactics or techniques that we can do. So let's say that we were running a children's camp or a summer camp, and we wanted to get information about dietary needs of children, right? So let's put in a single line text, and we'll just do a very simple, child's name. And then a drop down field that says, does your child have any special dietary needs, right? And we're just going to do yes and no for this. Yes, no. We're going to delete that third option. So now we have a simple drop-down field with yes or no. So what if they say yes? Then obviously we want to find out what those special dietary needs are. So we're going to do check boxes. And we're going to say something like vegan and vegetarian. And we're going to say, lactose intolerant. And we'll do, allergic to peanuts. And we'll have an other field. So now we're going to do check boxes so they can check more than one. And we're going to go to the Advanced tab, and we're going to click Enable Conditional Logic. And that's where the power comes of conditional logic, yeah? So now we can see that we can select the fields that were above this one, right? And we can do, we see the question, does your child have any dietary needs? And then we can select how it's going to be compared. So is not, if we're doing numbers greater than, less than, contain, start with, ends with, yeah? So there's a lot of different ways that you can set these up. You can also have multiple conditions. And you can say if it matches, all of the, so it has to match all of the conditions in order to show this field, or any of the conditions to show this field. So if you need more than one condition to show them the next field, then you can add more, and then choose whether it will be shown if it matches all the conditions, or even if it just matches one of them. But we'll do a simple example. Does your child have any dietary needs? If they say yes, that means show this field, yeah? So now if we go to our form preview, we'll see that we have our child's name, and it's defaulted to yes. So if we go no, you'll see it disappear. So I want to show you that a little bit better. So let's say that we're going to have our placeholder, please select, and we'll preview that again. Refresh. There we go. So now we have our child's name field, and we have our question, and when they select yes, our field pops open, and now we have our options. So please select all that apply, right? And then they'll select it. Now what if they click other? Let's say that we wanted to add in another field that said, please describe in detail. And we're going to do advanced, and we're going to enable conditional logic. And then we're going to say if on the please select all that apply, so on this field, if they select other, then we want to show this field, right? So let's update that, go back to our form and refresh. Now if I select yes, I see my first fields. If I select other, I see my text field. So that is the basis behind conditional logic, and you can get really, really tricky with these, and it's a great way to take what would be a very long form and just show users the information that is applicable to them without having to see anything that doesn't apply to their specific situation. But there's more that we can do with conditional logic. So I want to show you back to our form where we had our calculating form, a simple test, yeah? So this is where we had our calculating form. So there's a couple different things you can do with this. Now let's say we wanted to, if we wanted them to see whether or not they were right or wrong right away for whatever reason, right? So we can do, not a paragraph text, sorry. I wanted to do an HTML field because I want to show them some text, right? So what I can do is on our first answer, I can say, please try again. Enable conditional logic, and I can say, what is 2 plus 2? If it is not 4, because we know 4 is the correct answer, so if they do not select 4, show them this field. And then we'll duplicate that field and put in a correct answer. And we'll say, if it is 4, show this. And so let's update that and check that out now. So now if they select 4, correct. And if they select 5, please try again. So that's just kind of a way that we can, we can do lots of different things with conditional logic, but we can also use it with our score field, right? So we know that each of these questions is worth 5 points because that's what we set up in the values, that's what we set up during our calculating fields. So let's say that based on the score, which can be up to 10, or 10 being 100%, we wanted to create some conditional fields for that. And so for this, we'll put in HTML and we'll say, test results. And we'll say, you've gotten a perfect score. So we go to advanced and we go to conditional logic and we'll say the score is 10. All right, so if this number ends up being 10, we want to show that field. And then we'll duplicate it and we'll say, study harder next time. Advanced. And if our score is not 10. So if anything that is not 10, anything, or we could say also is less than 10. Let's say that, less than 10. All right, so either one would work, but you can also do less than, more than, or if you wanted to give them, let's just say, if you wanted to give them letter grades, right? So anything less than, well, this wouldn't really work. We need more questions. But if you had 10 questions and each one was a score of, had a point value of 10, then we could say if it's less than 40, give them a failure message. If it's 50 to 70, then they got a C, or however you want. You can kind of adjust that. And we can also, on our form settings, remember, we can remove the submit button on our form settings. So this can just be an independent page without them submitting if you wanted to show them the score right away. Probably you wouldn't. So I'll show you exactly how we would handle that in a second. But just show you that this is all kind of working now. Study harder next time. We would probably want to put in if the score is 0 or something like that if we had a lot of questions, so it wouldn't show them ahead of time. But correct, and then if I click on George Washington, you've got a perfect score. So I did a good job. So that's some basic stuff we can do with conditional logic. I just wanted to show you it can work off of these calculated fields. But let's say that we actually did want to do a quiz and we had a bunch of questions, and let's say it was one of those, one of those millions of those Facebook quizzes. So, what is your favorite, what is your spirit animal, or what is your color, or what color represents you, or whatever it is, right? And you ask them a bunch of loaded questions, and each of those questions has a point value. Right, so if you had 3 animals, bear, lion, and tiger, you would set up the questions. So if they got between 0 and 20, it would be the first animal, 20 and 40 second animal, 40 and 60 third animal. so that when we'd set up the questions that way, and then based on their answers, they would get a total point value. And based on that total point value, we wanted to redirect them to the page on our site that told them all about how their spirit animal is a bear and what that means about them and their favorite colors and star signs. Yeah. So in order to do this, we have our default confirmation, but we'll want to click Add New. Yeah. And we'll say, bears. You're a bear. Right, and so we can either do it with text, and we can show them, the information right up. So as soon as they hit submit, the form will disappear and they'll see this text. We can also, if we wanted to specially design a page for each result or redirect them to a URL based on a result, it all kind of works the same. But let's say that, we would do you're a bear, have the bear information, and we would go down to conditional logic, and we would say if their score is, and so if we're going to do that example where 0 through 20 is one result, 21 through 40 is another result, etc., then we could say if their score is less than 20, plus if their score is equal to 20, because we want to do 20 or less, right? So we need both of those in there, and then say any of the options, right? Because if it's less than 20, we want them to get bear. If it's equal to 20, we want them to get bear. And if it's higher, we want them to get something else. But we're going to put in this result now. So what this means is that's our conditional logic now, and that means they will only see this confirmation if they get this, if these conditions are met. So if their score is less or equal to 20, they will get the bear sign. We can do that. We can do a few of them, so we can put in 3 different pages for each of our results, and we can enable them or disable them individually. But that's how we would do that, is with conditional logic. And we can do the same thing. Let's say that we had a contact form. Let's do it with our hidden information form. And let's say that we had a drop down for department. So in our on our contact form, we want the form results to go to a specific person depending on the department that the person needs. So we can have an accounting department, we can have an administration department, we can have a tech support, right? So these are our options, and we update that. And now when we go into notifications, we can have our admin notification. We go to our normal admin email, and depending, we can say this is for our accounting department in this notification, and we'll say accounting@mysite.com. But the important is down here, we can do enable conditional logic, and we can go and select the department field. And if it is the accounting field, then this notification will go out. And that means that they will get an email if the user has selected the accounting department. So that's a few ways that we can use conditional logic. So you can see that this gives you a lot of kind of power and flexibility over your forms, specifically when it comes to what form fields they see, but also things like what confirmation pages they're shown, what text they're shown, additional form fields, and also the notification emails and where those go out. So you could even have, like for example, you could have a notification email that works off a checkbox. So if you had you could add a new notification email where if there was a form field, let's just do a checkbox down here at the bottom, checkbox, yes. Oh, here it is. So we could say, send me a copy of my form results. And we would just leave one option, yeah? So if they check this box, they want a copy of their form results. So we can go back to our notifications and click Add New, and user requests copy. And we can select a field. We have our email field in there, right? So that's the email field that they entered in. And then we can go down to conditional logic, and we can say, send me a copy of my form results is yes. Then the system knows that if they've checked that box, that value of that box is yes, right? And so if it is, then send them an email with a copy of their form results. So there's a lot of different things we can do with this. All of it's very useful. So play around with it. It can be a little intimidating at first, but really it's just simple logic. Just think about it in terms of, if X happens, then Y should happen afterwards, or if X happens, then Y should not happen. Depending on how you set up your conditional logic. So once you get into it, you'll find that it's actually quite easy. So that is conditional logic with gravity form.